Hi folks, my name is Kat Lyacone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to be talking about imposter syndrome, what it is, what the causes are, and what we can do to help manage it. Imposter syndrome was first identified in some research studies by a lady by the name of Pauline Rose Clance. And she initially started the study for women and then identified that men have about the same chance of having imposter syndrome as women. So the studies continued, and here's what they found out. So imposter syndrome, according to psychologists, is when there is a persistent doubt of one's ability or accomplishments and a sense of being exposed as a fraud, despite the contrary, right? Despite that we can prove otherwise, there's still this overwhelming feeling. Some of the other feelings that come through are self-doubt, self-sabotage, where we know what we should do, but somehow we don't do the right thing and we actually end up hurting ourselves a little bit. The fear of failure, we don't want to fail, so we freeze. Sometimes we feel very vulnerable. And the feeling of perfectionism, like everything has to be extremely perfect before we submit that job or pass along that information to someone else. So those are some of the characteristics of it. So what are the causes of imposter syndrome? Some of them can be caused by early childhood experiences. One example was if you happen to live with parents who were high achievers. Maybe you always had to get straight A's for them to feel like that you were hitting the mark. And maybe you couldn't. Maybe you were criticized a little bit more as a child. So some of those things can come up. Also, if you are starting a new job, perfect case of imposter syndrome. You've applied for the job, they've accepted you, you have this agreement, you start on your first day, but you still don't know what to expect. You're hoping for the best and you want to do well, but there is this little fear and anxiety that comes over us, right? We don't want to be an imposter, we want to succeed well. Also with the job, what's happened in my career is that either someone buys out the organization that I'm currently working with, or all new leadership changes. And in that case, I knew my job, I did it well, I was hired, I was on the job for a while, and all these changes happen. So that made me feel a little bit of anxiety and fear, and will I be enough, and will they still want to keep me, right, as this employee, and am I still going to do a good job in their eyes? Starting a new school. Anytime someone is starting college or high school, or any new school, it can be overwhelming going into this environment as you're with other learners doing the same. I experienced this also as going back to school later in life to get my bachelor's degree at UConn. Thankfully, I was at a satellite office and I wasn't in a room full of 300 students, but I recall coming in one of my first semester classes and sitting, and the students were looking at me, and I was a little concerned. I was definitely feeling a little bit like an imposter, right? What was I doing here as an older individual? I come to find out later that the students actually thought that I was the professor because I was a little bit older up in my years. They thought I was actually teaching, and that's why most of them had given me that look. So it was interesting to find out that it was indeed my imagination. If there's a life-changing event, I married my husband just about 5 years ago next month, and as much as I loved him and I knew I wanted to marry him, there was that little fear, the wedding jitters, as I was walking down the aisle, realizing I'm walking down the aisle as a single woman, and when I get up there I'm going to be a married woman, and will I be a good wife, and will he love me later in life, and is he the one for me? There's always that little bit like, how am I going to do in this situation? Also, someone else that might be experiencing this is a mother-to-be. Will you be a good mother? Will your baby love you? So there's these things that we do tend to worry about before stepping into that role. Is it going to be right for us? So, what do we do to manage these expectations, manage these feelings that come over to us, right? So the first one is acknowledging them. We have to acknowledge that sometimes we're feeling this way, right? And acknowledging it to yourself and maybe reaching out to someone, because you are not alone. There are other people that experience this, and even famous people Albert Einstein has been known to have imposter syndrome, and reportedly Tom Hanks and Michelle Pfeiffer, two well-known actors, also experience this on a regular basis. Yet they push forward and they are indeed successful. Perfection is not required. It's reminding us that things don't have to be perfect. No one is perfect. One way that this can kind of help is if you're working in collaboration with someone, let's say on an assignment before you have to turn it in, where you can collaborate and share your ideas just to make sure that you're on the right page and getting input from someone's value, from someone's thinking that you trust. Now, another thing that you can do is make note of your achievements. You can literally write a list of what you believe are your strengths and also your achievements, your degrees, thank you notes, anything that shows that other people have validated your work and that you yourself know that you are quite capable. This can help tame down those imposter syndromes because you're fact checking, you're questioning why you're thinking this way and then realizing the facts are you are good enough. Now, focusing on providing value. Something else you could do is get your mind off yourself. Go provide your company value, go help out a friend. When you realize that you are providing value, there is this sense of fulfillment. We can get kind of our mind off ourselves and what we're thinking about and put it onto someone else and share in that. View things as learning opportunities and experiences. Everyone doesn't know everything, right? There's always that learning curve, and if we can think about things sometimes as a scientific project. If you're a scientist and your first experiment doesn't work, I don't think scientists consider themselves a failure. I think they're closer to the solution, or they're navigating through what doesn't work to find out what does. So if we can take out those challenges with that kind of new beginner's mind, I think that could also prove to be quite helpful. So how can we use imposter syndrome for good? Because there is some good in it too. Imposter syndrome can motivate us. It pulls us out of our comfort zone so that we're not doing the same thing for 25, 30 years without wanting that growth. Sometimes we do need to be a little bit uncomfortable to make that stretch to move us to our next level. So I say, be yourself, because everyone else is already taken. It's important that we value our genuineness. We are unique and we do have something to offer. So keep that in mind and love yourself just as you are. So thanks so much for watching today. I sincerely appreciate it. If you can, like the button, subscribe if you'd like to hear more, and I always welcome your feedback. Thanks again, folks.